Jack Harris was a college student struggling to make ends meet. Between tuition, rent, and everyday expenses, he was always on the lookout for ways to earn extra money. So, when he saw an ad for a late-night food delivery job that promised good pay, he jumped at the opportunity. The job was with a small, locally owned company called Midnight Cravings. The name was fitting. Their specialty was delivering food during the late-night hours when most other services were closed. The manager, a friendly but mysterious man named Mr. Blackwood, welcomed Jack warmly. "You'll be working the night shift from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., Mr. Blackwood explained. "It's perfect for students like you. Less traffic, fewer distractions, and better tips from night owls and partiers." Jack was eager to start. The first few nights were uneventful. He drove around the quiet city streets, delivering burgers, pizzas, and other late-night munchies to grateful customers. It was easy money, and Jack found the solitude of the night shifts oddly calming. One particularly cold and foggy night, Jack received a delivery request to an address he didn't recognize. The GPS directed him to an old, dilapidated mansion on the outskirts of town. The house looked abandoned, with boarded-up windows and overgrown weeds choking the pathway. Jack felt a chill run down his spine as he parked his car. He double-checked the address on the order. It was correct. "Maybe it's just an old house someone's fixing up," he thought to himself, trying to shake off the unease. He grabbed the bag of food and approached the creaky front door. Before he could knock, the door slowly opened on its own. Jack peered inside but couldn't see much in the dim light. "Hello?" he called out, but there was no response. Summoning his courage, Jack stepped inside. The air was cold and musty. He walked through the dark hallway, guided only by the faint glow of his phone's flashlight. As he reached the end of the corridor, he saw a faint light coming from a room at the far end. Jack entered the room and found it surprisingly well lit, with candles placed on various surfaces. The contrast between this room and the rest of the house was stark. In the center of the room stood a large, ornate table covered with a pristine white cloth. On the table lay a peculiar item, a small, antique music box. Next to it was an envelope addressed to the deliverer. Curiosity getting the better of him, Jack opened the envelope and found a handwritten note. "Thank you for delivering my order. Please take the music box as a token of my gratitude. E.S." Jack felt a mixture of confusion and intrigue. He had never encountered a customer who wasn't there to receive their order. He looked around the room again but saw no one. With a shrug, he picked up the music box and left the mansion, deciding to report the strange encounter to Mr. Blackwood the next day. Back at his apartment, Jack examined the music box. It was intricately designed with delicate carvings of mythical creatures and landscapes. He turned the small key, and a hauntingly beautiful melody began to play. There was something mesmerizing about the tune, and Jack found himself lost in its spell. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. Jack noticed shadows moving in the corners of his vision, whispers in the dead of night, and a persistent feeling of being watched. The once peaceful night shifts became increasingly eerie, with malfunctioning car lights, strange noises on the radio, and a general sense of foreboding. Jack confided in his best friend, Sarah, who was fascinated by the paranormal. "It sounds like you've brought something home with you," she said, examining the music box. "This thing could be cursed or haunted. We need to find out more about that mansion and whoever ES is." Sarah and Jack decided to investigate the mansion. Armed with flashlights and a camera, they returned to the eerie old house. This time, they explored more thoroughly, finding old photographs, journals, and documents that painted a picture of the mansion's history. The mansion had once belonged to the Everly family, a wealthy but reclusive lineage with a penchant for the occult. The last known occupant was Eleanor Everly, who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances over 50 years ago. Local legends spoke of dark rituals and restless spirits. Jack and Sarah dug deeper, finding references to a powerful artifact, a music box that was said to trap the soul of its owner. The more they read, the more convinced they became that Jack's music box was indeed this cursed item. The paranormal activity intensified. Jack's apartment became a nightmare of moving objects, ghostly apparitions, and terrifying noises. Sarah, too, experienced frightening visions and inexplicable phenomena. They knew they had to act fast. They consulted with a local historian and occult expert, Professor Donovan, who confirmed their worst fears. "The music box is a vessel for Eleanor's spirit," he explained. "To free her, and yourselves, you must return the box to the mansion and perform a cleansing ritual." Professor Donovan provided them with a detailed ritual involving specific herbs, candles, and incantations. Armed with this knowledge, Jack and Sarah returned to the mansion one final time. The atmosphere was heavy with anticipation and dread. They set up the ritual in the candlelit room where Jack had first found the music box. As they began the incantations, the air grew colder, and the shadows deepened. The music box started playing on its own, the haunting melody filling the room. Suddenly, a ghostly figure appeared before them, Eleanor Everly. Her presence was both terrifying and sorrowful. Jack and Sarah continued the ritual, chanting louder as the apparition grew more tangible. The music box's melody reached a crescendo, and with a final, powerful incantation, the room exploded in light. When the light faded, Eleanor was gone. The music box lay silent and still on the table. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a calm, peaceful silence. Jack and Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of relief and accomplishment. They left the mansion, feeling lighter than they had in weeks. The haunting was over, and they had freed Eleanor's spirit. Jack decided to keep the music box as a reminder of their ordeal, but it never played on its own again. Life slowly returned to normal. Jack continued his job at Midnight Cravings, but the mysterious deliveries ceased. He and Sarah grew closer, their bond strengthened by the harrowing experience. They often recounted the story to friends, who listened in awe and disbelief. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that there were more mysteries out there, waiting to be uncovered. He and Sarah made a pact to explore other paranormal phenomena, driven by a newfound curiosity and sense of adventure. Months later, Jack received another late-night delivery request to a familiar address, the old mansion. His heart raced as he approached the house, but this time, it looked different. The windows were no longer boarded up, and the garden was well maintained. A woman opened the door, her smile warm and welcoming. "You must be Jack," she said. "Thank you for coming. I've been expecting you." Jack was speechless. "Who are you?" he finally managed to ask. "I'm Eleanor's granddaughter, Emily," she explained. "After you freed her spirit, I decided to restore the family home. I wanted to thank you personally." Jack felt a mix of surprise and satisfaction. The nightmare had come full circle, leading to a hopeful new beginning for the Everly family. As he handed over the delivery, he realized that sometimes, the scariest experiences can lead to the most unexpected and rewarding outcomes. And with that, Jack drove off into the night, ready for whatever adventures awaited him next. It was a stormy night in the city of Ardonia, a night when most people preferred the warmth of their homes over the chilly rain pounding the streets. Yet, for those in the food delivery business, the rain meant more orders and higher tips. Dave Collins, a seasoned delivery driver for Quick Bite, was no exception. Dave had been on the job for 5 years, and he thought he'd seen it all. From drunken late-night customers to eccentric orders, nothing surprised him anymore. However, that evening, he received an order that was peculiar even by his standards. The order came from an old mansion on the outskirts of the city, a place he had never been to before. The instructions were clear: deliver the food to the back door and leave without knocking. Maybe they just want to avoid getting disturbed, he thought, shrugging off the odd request. As he drove towards the mansion, the rain intensified. The windshield wipers worked furiously, but visibility was still poor. The GPS led him through winding roads that grew narrower and darker as he neared his destination. Finally, he arrived at the mansion, its grand structure barely visible through the torrential downpour. The mansion stood ominously, its silhouette cutting a stark figure against the stormy sky. Dave drove around to the back, finding the door exactly as described in the order. He stepped out of his car, clutching the food tightly to protect it from the rain. The back door was partially open, creaking slightly in the wind. Dave's instincts told him to leave the food and go, but curiosity got the better of him. He took a step inside, calling out, "Hello. Your food is here." Silence. He placed the food on a small table just inside the door and turned to leave, but a sudden gust of wind slammed the door shut. He tried the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic set in as he realized he was trapped. Dave pulled out his phone to call for help, but there was no signal. The storm must have knocked out the service in this remote area. Taking a deep breath, he decided to explore the mansion, hoping to find another way out. The inside of the mansion was as eerie as its exterior. Dust-covered furniture, cobwebbed chandeliers, and faded portraits on the walls created an unsettling atmosphere. Dave's footsteps echoed through the empty halls as he wandered deeper into the house. In one room, he found a fireplace with a recently extinguished fire. Someone had been here recently. He called out again, louder this time, "Hello. Is anyone here?" Still no response. As Dave moved through the mansion, he noticed the portraits on the walls were all of the same family: a stern-looking man, a sorrowful woman, and a little girl with hauntingly sad eyes. Something about the girl's portrait unsettled him. Her eyes seemed to follow him wherever he went. He entered what appeared to be a study, where a large, dusty book lay open on a desk. The book was a journal, its pages filled with the meticulous handwriting of the mansion's former owner. As he flipped through the pages, he learned about the family's tragic history. The little girl in the portraits was named Emily, and she had disappeared mysteriously years ago. Her parents, consumed by grief, had abandoned the mansion shortly after her disappearance. Dave felt a chill run down his spine. He had a growing sense that he was not alone in the house. As he closed the journal, Dave heard a faint whisper behind him. He spun around but saw no one. The whisper came again, more distinct this time. It seemed to be saying, "Help me." His heart raced. He followed the sound, which led him to a hidden door behind a bookshelf. The door opened into a narrow, dark passageway. The whisper grew louder as he ventured deeper into the passage. "Help me," it repeated. At the end of the passage, he found a small room with a single window. The room was empty except for a child's doll sitting in the corner. The doll's eyes were eerily similar to Emily's from the portraits. Dave picked up the doll, and as he did, the whispering stopped. He felt a strange connection to the object, as if it was a key to understanding what had happened in the mansion. Suddenly, he heard footsteps approaching. He hid behind a curtain just as the door opened. A figure entered the room, cloaked in shadows. The figure moved to the window and began to speak in a low voice, recounting the events that led to Emily's disappearance. Dave listened intently, piecing together the story. Emily had been locked in this room by her father, who believed she was possessed. The poor girl had died alone, her spirit unable to find peace. The figure turned, revealing an old, haggard man, Emily's father. He had returned to the mansion, haunted by guilt and sorrow, unable to move on. Dave stepped out from his hiding place, startling the old man. "I know what happened to Emily," he said. "You need to let her go." The old man looked at Dave with wild eyes. "You don't understand," he muttered. "She was cursed. I had to protect us all." "She's not cursed," Dave insisted. "She's just a lost child who needs to find peace." The old man fell to his knees, sobbing. "I didn't mean to hurt her. I just wanted to save her." Dave placed the doll in the old man's hands. "You need to let her go. Set her spirit free." With trembling hands, the old man took the doll and walked to the window. He whispered an apology, tears streaming down his face. As he placed the doll on the windowsill, a soft glow surrounded it. The room grew warmer, and Dave felt a sense of calm wash over him. The doll disappeared, and with it, the oppressive atmosphere of the mansion lifted. The old man thanked Dave, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You've freed us both," he said before vanishing into the ether. Dave found his way back to the main part of the mansion, and the front door was now open. He stepped out into the rain, which had lessened to a gentle drizzle. When Dave returned to his car, he found his phone had regained signal. He called his manager, explaining the bizarre events of the night. His manager was skeptical but relieved that Dave was safe. As he drove away from the mansion, Dave couldn't shake the feeling that he had been part of something extraordinary. He had helped a lost soul find peace and uncovered a tragic story that had been hidden for years. A week later, Dave received another order from the same address. Nervous but curious, he accepted it. This time, the instructions were different: deliver to the front door. When he arrived, the mansion looked different, more welcoming, less haunted. He knocked on the door, and to his surprise, a young woman answered. She introduced herself as Emily. "Thank you for helping my grandfather and me," she said with a warm smile. "We've finally found peace." Dave handed over the food, feeling a sense of closure. As he walked back to his car, he glanced back at the mansion one last time. It no longer seemed like a place of horror but a home that had been given a second chance. In that moment, Dave realized that sometimes, the scariest places hide the most poignant stories. And sometimes, the most ordinary jobs can lead to extraordinary encounters. The rain had stopped completely, and the sky was clear. Dave drove away, knowing he would never forget the night he met the unseen customer and the little girl who finally found her way home.